called the Rio de Duvida, or the River of Doubt. They knew about where it emptied in to the Amazon. People had explored it upstream. Rubber tappers, individuals harvesting rubber and latex from the trees of the Amazon basin. But when you're exploring a river, next slide, going upstream, you can rely on the strength of the river to carry you back down. So you're fighting the current to make progress, but if anything goes haywire, it'll be easy to go back. If you run into an obstacle, civilization's that way, and the river's flowing towards civilization, and you can just kind of ride along, and it's going to be relatively easy. In the early 1900s, around 1914, President Roosevelt suffered a staggering defeat in his final bid for the White House. And throughout Roosevelt's life, whenever an emotional or other, whenever he faced a difficulty in life and he needed to kind of heal from it, he would go out to the nastiest wilderness, the hardest work, the roughest journey that he could find, and he would do it. And it would take too long to tell the story of how he wound up in the Amazon River basin with the Brazilian explorer named Candido Rondon. Rondon had discovered the headwaters of the aforementioned river, and he was the one that gave it its moniker, the River of Doubt. He had discovered its headwaters. That's where the river started. They knew about where it connected with the Amazon. They knew where it started. Everything that was in between was a mystery. They had never been that way before, and no one had ever been that way before. What would make Roosevelt's expedition different? He was not going to explore the river from the downstream side and work his way upstream. In his expedition, started at the headwaters. They started at the top of the river basin, the top of the watershed. Rondon had stretched telegraph lines across at that spot, and there was a bridge across the river at the place where the end of civilization was. And there's a tale of Roosevelt standing on that makeshift bridge in the middle of that desert, looking at that river. And once they embarked, there wasn't any coming back. Whatever rapids, whatever falls, whatever uncontacted native tribes they ran into, they were either going to find their way out or they were going to perish in the effort to do so. It would have been impossible for them to fight the current back up to their launching point. Once they embarked, they were embarked, and that was it. They were committed. And they were going to a place that not only had they never been, but had never been charted. Nobody had ever been that way before. There was no backing out. There was no starting again. It's moments like that in life when what's in our heart is really revealed to us. Before Jesus went to the cross, he tried to prepare his disciples for what was going to happen by speaking to them with words. Sometimes he told them very plainly what was going to take place. And we know that there are places in our brain that don't respond to teaching, but demand experiences in order to train that portion of our brain. So Jesus, in his wisdom, the master teacher, gave them that also. Jesus had a friend by the name of Lazarus. Jesus delayed his journey to go see Lazarus, but when he showed up at Lazarus' place in John chapter 11, verse 43, next slide, they brought him to the tomb, and when he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And the man who had, next slide, verse 44, the man who had died came out, his hand and his feet bound with linen strips and his face wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said, "Unbind him and let him go." And his disciples were there and they saw all of this. And so when Jesus told them about his resurrection, they should have had a frame of reference for that. They should have kind of understood. They should have got it. They could have looked back. It would have been hard to do, but they could have looked back and said, "You know what? That we saw that deal with Lazarus. Let's just kind of wait until day 3 until we panic." We know it didn't really work out that way, but they had a frame of reference. But even at that, it's not the first time that a miracle like this had happened. And Mary and Martha and their family would have been students of the Old Testament, and they would have known about the prophets, and so they would have known about the day that they were burying somebody in a tumultuous time during the history of the nation of Israel, and the prophet named Elisha had been laid in a tomb, and there were marauders coming, there were bandits coming, and they had to bury their friend very quickly, and so they laid him down in on top of the bones of Elisha, and as soon as that body touched the prophet's bones, the body revived and stood up again. And so they had a frame of reference, and Lazarus wasn't the first one. But even this wasn't all that much of a surprise, because if you look back in Elisha's ministry, there was the day when the widow's child had passed, and Elisha walked into that room and stretched upon him and called him to life again. But even that wasn't really a new thing, because Elisha's predecessor had gone through something similar, and another individual's child had been, and they called it to life again. And so it wasn't a new river, it wasn't a new place. It was, they had seen it happen before, or had it happen to somebody else. They had a reference, they had a frame of there was a chart for this thing. They knew how to navigate these waters. But it was different for Abraham. God spoke to Abraham the first time we have recorded in Genesis chapter 12 and verse number 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, and from your kindred, and from your father's house to the land that I will show you." It was a place he had never been before. It was a place he couldn't wrap his mind around. There wasn't a chart for this. And Abraham did, and then God did it again. In Genesis chapter 22 and verse number 2, God spoke to Abraham and he said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the mount, go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you." God was leading Abraham to a place he didn't have a chart for. When Magellan went through the straits that would later be named for him, it is said that he had charts. No one knew where they came from or who they were, but someone had been that way before. It wasn't that way for Abraham. Abraham's life was characterized by God leading him to places he never thought he'd be. Uncharted waters. The river of doubt. This is what the Bible says about the faith of Abraham. It says, by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he who had received promises, I'm sorry, Brad, I forgot. There you go. Good job. He who had received promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac your offspring shall be named. Verse number 18 tells us that Abraham didn't have a backup plan. He was standing in a very similar place to where Roosevelt and all of his team was standing at the top of that river. There wasn't another option. Everything was on the table. As they say, the chips were down. If this hand doesn't play, then the game's over and I lost. Abraham put everything he had on his faith. And this is what he said. Verse number 19, next slide. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. Abraham lived at a time when there wasn't a frame of reference for a resurrection, either in the immediate or in the future. Man's interaction with God was in a very primitive place. But Abraham had faith in that moment. We can go to the next slide. It's easy to have faith in moments that we can imagine ourselves standing. It's hard to have faith in moments that we don't have a frame of reference for. God, I didn't see this coming. God, you didn't give a lot of advance warning about this deal. God says, this is a mountain I will show you. Abraham had faith for waters that weren't charted. Abraham had faith in a God that could do things that not only had he never seen, but no one had ever seen. I feel like God sent me with a message today. For individuals whose lives are in a place they never could have imagined. And I feel like God sent me with a message that says, even in those places, we can trust Him. You say, Pastor, I feel like I'm stuck in a river of doubt. Pastor, I don't know where this river's going. I have questions. Abraham believed God for things that hadn't been invented yet. If we could all stand all over this place today. There are some of us in this place today standing in a place we never thought we'd stand. Some of us in this place are standing in a place we never thought we'd stand again. Some of us are in a river that we don't understand. I came to talk to us today about a God that we can trust in every moment, in every circumstance, in every situation, and know that He is there. God came through for Abraham, and God's going to come through for us. Let's come and gather around this altar one more time. Let's bring our uncertainties. Let's bring our impossibilities. Let's bring our questions. And let's lay them at the feet of a God that we can trust. Let's sing. Let's gather around this altar and worship one more time before we bring it in for a landing today.
Your mercy never